can evaporate once more and begin the entire tedious process all over again is probably the most boring phenomenon in the water cycle. It would be far better for you to get up and go right to your nearest library and spend several boring days reading every single boring fact you can find about collection, because the phenomenon of what happens to Sonny Baudelaire over the course of these pages is the most dreadful phenomenon I can think of, and I can think of a great many. The water cycle may be a series of boring phenomena, but the story of the Baudelaires is something else entirely, and this is an excellent opportunity to read something boring, instead of learning what became of the Baudelaires as the rushing waters of the stricken stream carried them away from the mountains. "What will become of us?" Violet asked, raising her voice to be heard over the rushing water. "I don't think I can invent anything that can stop this toboggan." "I don't think you should try," Klaus called back to his sister. "The arrival of false spring has thawed out the stream, but the waters are still very cold. If one of us fell into the stream, I'm not sure how long we could survive." "Quickly," Sonny whimpered. The youngest Baudelaire often talked in a way that could be difficult to understand, but lately her speech had been developing almost as quickly as her cooking skills, and her siblings knew that Sonny was referring to Quigley Quagmire, with whom the Baudelaires had recently become friends. Quigley had helped Violet and Klaus reach the top of Mount Fraught in order to find the VFD headquarters and rescue Sonny from Count Olaf's clutches, but another tributary of the stricken stream had carried him off in the opposite direction, and the cartographer, a word which here means someone who is very good with maps, and of whom Violet Baudelaire was particularly fond, didn't even have a toboggan to keep him out of the chilly water. "I'm sure Quigley has gotten out of the water," Violet said quickly, although of course she was sure of no such thing. "I only wish we knew where he was going. He told us to meet him somewhere, but the waterfall interrupted him." The toboggan bobbed in the water as Klaus reached into his pocket and drew out a dark blue notebook. The notebook had been a gift from Quigley, and Klaus was using it as a commonplace book, a phrase which here means notebook in which he wrote any interesting or useful information. "We decoded that message telling us about an important VFD gathering on Thursday," he said, "and thanks to Sonny, we know that the meeting is at the Hotel Denouement. Maybe that's where Quigley wants to meet us, at the last safe place." "But we don't know where it is," Violet pointed out. "How can we meet someone in an unknown location?" The three Baudelaires sighed, and for a few moments the siblings sat quietly on the toboggan and listened to the gurgling of the stream. There are some people who like to watch a stream for hours, staring at the glittering water and thinking about the mysteries of the world. But the waters of the stricken stream were too dirty to glitter, and every mystery the children tried to solve seemed to reveal even more mysteries, and even those mysteries contained mysteries. So when they pondered these mysteries, they felt more overwhelmed than thoughtful. They knew that VFD was a secret organization, but they couldn't seem to find out much about what the organization did, or why it should concern the Baudelaires. They knew that Count Olaf was very eager to get his filthy hands on a certain sugar bowl, but they had no idea why the sugar bowl was so important, or where in the world it was. They knew that there were people in the world who could help them, but so many of these people, guardians, friends, bankers, had proven to be of no help at all, or had vanished from their lives just when the Baudelaires needed them most, and they knew there were people in the world who would not help them. Villainous people, and their number seemed to be growing as their treachery and wickedness trickled all over the earth, like a dreadful water cycle of woe, and despair. But right now the biggest mystery seemed to be what to do next, and as the Baudelaires huddled together on the floating toboggan, they could not think of a thing. "If we stay on the toboggan," Violet said finally, "where do you think we'll go?" "Down the mountains," Klaus said. "Water runs downhill. The stricken stream probably leads out of the Mortmain Mountains into the hinterlands, and then eventually it'll lead to some larger body of water, a lake or an ocean. From there the water will evaporate into clouds, fall as rain and snow, and so on." "Tedium," Sunny said. "The water cycle is quite dull," Klaus agreed, "but it might be the easiest way to get us away from Count Olaf." "That's true," Violet said. "Olaf said he'd be right behind us." "Esmelita," Sunny said, which meant something like, "along with Esme Squalor and Carmelita Spats," and the Baudelaires frowned as they thought of Olaf's girlfriend, who participated in Olaf's schemes because she believed that treachery and deception were very stylish, or in, and the former classmate of the Baudelaires, who had recently joined Olaf for selfish reasons of her own. "So we're just going to sit on this toboggan," Violet asked, "and see where it takes us?" "It's not much of a plan," Klaus admitted, "but I can't think of a better one." "Passive," Sunny said, and her siblings nodded glumly. Passive is an unusual word to hear from a baby, and in fact it is an unusual word to hear from a Baudelaire, or anyone else who leads an interesting life. It merely means accepting what is happening without doing anything about it, and certainly everyone has passive moments from time to time. Perhaps you have experienced a passive moment at the shoe store, when you sat in a chair as the shoe salesperson forced your feet into a series of ugly and uncomfortable shoes, when all the while you wanted a bright red pair with strange buckles that nobody on earth was going to buy for you. The Baudelaires had experienced a passive moment at Briny Beach, where they had learned the terrible news about their parents, and had been numbly led by Mr. Poe toward their new, unfortunate lives. I recently experienced a passive moment myself, sitting in a chair as a shoe salesperson forced my feet into a series of ugly and uncomfortable positions, when all the while I wanted a bright red pair of shoes with strange buckles that nobody on earth was going to buy for me. But a passive moment in the middle of a rushing stream, when villainous people are hot on your trail, is a difficult moment to accept, which is why the Baudelaires fidgeted on the toboggan as the stricken stream carried them further and further downhill, just as I fidgeted as I tried to plan my escape from that sinister shoe emporium. Violet fidgeted and thought of Quigley, hoping he had managed to escape from the cold water and get himself to safety. Klaus fidgeted and thought of VFD, hoping that he could still learn more about the organization, even though their headquarters had been destroyed. And Sunny fidgeted and thought of the fish in the stricken stream, who would occasionally stick their heads out of the ashen water and cough. She was wondering if the ashes, which were left in the water by a recent fire in the mountains and made it difficult for the fish to breathe, would mean the fish wouldn't taste very good, even if you used a recipe with plenty of butter and lemon. The Baudelaires were so busy fidgeting and thinking that when the toboggan rounded one of the odd square sides of the mountain peaks, it was a moment before they noticed the view spread below them. Only when a few scraps of newspaper blew in front of their faces did the Baudelaires look down and gasp at what they saw. "What is it?" Violet said. "I don't know," Klaus said. "It's hard to tell from so high up." "Subjovic," Sunny said, and she spoke the truth. From this side of the Mortmain Mountains, the Baudelaires had expected to see the hinterlands, a vast expanse of flat landscape where they had spent quite some time. Instead,